Hey there, everybody. Teching 101 here, talking about Rob Lucci today, which means I had to wear a top hat. I also have a pigeon. I don't have a pigeon, although I do have a jack-o'-lantern because it's the beginning of September, which means it's time to decorate for Halloween. Full disclosure, I've already decorated for Halloween upstairs since like early August this year, I think. I was just like, yeah, there's nothing in August. Who cares? I could just decorate for Halloween now. I'm trying to maximize the amount of Halloween that I could fit into the year. You know what I mean? I'm thinking August till the end of November. About there, I'll see where that goes. But yeah, no, if I'm really gonna, if Rob Lucci is gonna continue to be in this story and do stuff, that's a little bit up for debate considering where we're at right now. He's fighting Zoro after all. I don't know where this is gonna go. I mean, honestly, okay. Raise your hand if you think we're doing a lot of participation things as of late in these videos, but do you think it would be, good to the story or good for Rob Lucci's character if he were to just, die right here, right? Like, has he served his function in the One Piece story and Zoro can just cut off his head and just, dice him into little cube dice bacon little chunks and just be like, all right. And then Hattori's there just crying and just like, is that something that could happen with his character and just like, all right, he's done everything he needed to in this story. He could just go ahead and die. So let me know how you feel about that. But provided he doesn't die and he's still around and he continues to be around, I need to obtain some kind of carrier pigeon or something. Send me carrier pigeons if you have those. I just wake up tomorrow, open up my front door, and see a bunch of pigeons out my front door with little notes that are like, here, Teching, have a carrier pigeon. I'm like, all right, I choose you, and then all the other ones fly away. All right, so Rob Lucci, last chapter, confirmed that he was not he's like, oh, I'm pretending to be on the side of the government, or I'm going to give them fake information, because the chapter prior to that, we had, him talking to himself in the background, leaking information to Kizaru and St. J. Garcia Saturn, and then Kizaru himself kind of laid out the map, and he's like, oh, Rob Lucci is a reliable agent for sure. He gave us the location of everything. We know where the power plant is. We know where they're at. We know who's all based in the lab right now. We know where everybody's location is. Way to go, Rob. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, okay, well, let's not go crazy yet. I mean, we don't know, Rob Lucci could have given them fake information. We're not sure, because the government did try to kill Lucci twice, at least that we know of so far. With the Buster Call, they didn't care about them being on Eni's lobby. They were just going to Buster Call the entire island. If it wasn't for Blue and O's Devil Fruit, the Door fruit, they would not have survived. They managed to get away. And then just now, even though Cypher Pole's on the island, the government's beginning this siege and this onslaught, and once again, it's just not really caring that the Cypher Pole 0 is there, or the other Cypher Pole agents as well, 5, 7, and 8 are all on the island as well. They do not care, as long as they retrieve York and the power plant and Vegapunk's inventions and they kill the Stella. Those are the main mission parameters. Anything else is kind of dispendable, even in the case with Rob Lucci, their top agent, as well as Kaku and Stussy, okay? Stussy would have defected anyway because she's a clone, and she is, her allegiances are with Vegapunk, so obviously she was going to leave anyway. Kaku, I still feel Kaku's had enough of this bullshit. I feel like Kaku, if he makes it out of this alive, regardless of where Lucci's at, regardless of if Lucci survives or if he dies, I think Kaku's done, and he's going to put in his letter of resignation, as it were. He's just like, I am done with the government. I will travel with... I don't think he's going to join, the Straw Hats for long term, but he's like, look, I'm going to hang out with you guys until I get somewhere where I can escape and go off to some island, and I can hang out there, and maybe I can ask the rest of the Cypher Pole 9 crew, Fukuro and Blue and O and Khalifa and Kumadori and everybody to, come and join me. Just guys, can we just have enough of this, right? So, there's that. That's Kaku's story. But Rob Lucci actively decides again and again to still be loyal for the world government, despite the fact they obviously don't care about him. And even at one point when they all tried to defect, they ended up back at Cypher Pole 0. They ended up being promoted, rather. You ever have that issue where you try to leave your job and you're like, I'm done with this place, I quit. And then cut to 2 years later and you're somehow higher up on the echelon of your job? Because that happens a lot. It's like, wait, no, come back. We'll give you a job. We'll make you a manager. I'd be like, all right, I guess, but we're still going to treat you relatively the same way. Yeah, okay. All right, so that I feel like is going to be explained at some point here. So some people are upset by this. I've even seen some comments that were like, wow, Rob Lucci really is just a one-dimensional character, huh? He's an assassin that wants to kill everybody, and he's loyal to the government, and that's never gonna change, huh? So I don't consider Rob Lucci a one-dimensional character personally. What makes a one-dimensional character? I wanted to ask you guys that as well. I would say a one-dimensional character is a character that has basically been Flanderized so much they feel like insanely boring. Flanderization being the process of, like, if you've ever seen The Simpsons with Ned Flanders, in the early seasons of The Simpsons, Ned Flanders actually had a lot more personality, and he was like a little bit more, he wasn't just like a Bible thumper kind of guy. He was actually a little bit more like neutral and actually gave Homer some advice sometimes. He even had a little bit of sass in the early seasons. But then after a while, Ned Flanders' character essentially just becomes like, oh, how you doodly neighbor? I'm religious guy. That's basically all he is. I love Jesus. And that's basically Ned's entire character in later seasons, okay? So, like, Flanderization is when a particular character just takes on to, like, one particular angle, and it does become one-dimensional and kind of boring, and it's just all they are, right? So, I wouldn't say Rob Lucci is boring. In the same way that, like, would Luffy be considered a one-dimensional character? Because Luffy's character is pretty simple. Not to say that's a bad thing. He's just not overly complex. Luffy is just like, hey, I want to be king of the pirates. I want to go on a great adventure with my friends. And now there's aspects of Luffy's character you could dissect all day and be like, oh yeah, Luffy's very complex when you break it all down, like on the subconscious level. And also his lineage and everything and his connections to Joy Boy. Yeah, but we're not talking about that. We're just talking about how Luffy himself views himself and his goals and his dreams. It's not very overly complicated from Luffy's perspective, but he is definitely not a one-dimensional character. So I would say, like, Flanderization and boredom is the two things that were like, oh my god, this character is one-dimensional, okay? So the situation with Rob Lucci was the greatest assassin that Cypher Pole really ever knew. And he was raised ever since a child to be that, okay? So then he does that his whole life, and he's really good at it. I mean, his body count is huge. Somebody asked me once, actually, I think it was one of those quizzes I took, like a One Piece quiz online. Somebody asked me, like, who's the most evil villain in One Piece? And the options were Doflamingo, Kaido, Crocodile, and Rob Lucci, I think. I think those were the options. And you're looking at all of them, and I think, if you're talking about pure raw body count and body count alone, personally killed all these people, I would say Rob Lucci might have the highest body count there. Like, Kaido was a Yonko, sure, but a lot of people did his killing, like, under his umbrella. I'm talking about personally going out there and murdering people. Like, Rob Lucci murdered, like, an entire town once, like, an entire fortress full of civilians that were hostages. All right, I think there were several hundred, if not thousands of those, and that was in a single night, and he was, like, 13 years old at the time. All right, so he might have the largest, like, body count personally, okay? So he does that his whole life. Then Enies Lobby happens, okay? And he fights the Straw Hats, and, he has a little bit of that carnal, primal, carnivorous, wrath because of his zone, his carnivorous zone, the leopard, right? So he kind of feels that bloodlust to fight Luffy. So he fights Luffy, but at the end of the day, the government decides to Buster Call the island anyway. Bluno manages to use his powers. He wakes up right in the nick of time to get all of his friends out of there, and then they go to, I think St. Poplar was the island. They walk along the sea train tracks. Rob Lucci's in a coma at this point after fighting Luffy. So he recovers. They raise all this money in the streets to make money so they can pay for the doctors to heal their friend. And so Rob Lucci eventually wakes up, and they have their whole CP9 independent report where they save the island from pirates, and then they go back to their homeland. They defeat Berrygood, and then they decide, Rob Lucci at the end of Cypher Pole 9's independent report picks up the Den Den Mushi, and he says to Spondum and Spondine, one day we shall return. So the implication was, we're leaving for now, and we're going to assess some things, but we're going to come back one day, and you're going to hear from us. The implication was they're going to get their revenge on Spondum and Spondine, the Cypher Pole Agency, and the world government at large, is the kind of idea. So then, we don't know what happens after this. I think we're going to find out pretty soon, though, through Rob Lucci and Kaku. Kaku might even explain to, like, oh, this is what happened after Enies Lobby, guys. This is what went down, right? We decided to leave, but... Okay, so cut to 2 years later, and they're all members of Cypher Pole Zero now, even Spondum, okay? So, I imagine there's a couple of ways that this could have went down, okay? A couple of ways this could have happened, all right? So, one way that it could have went down is the government went after them and was just like, okay, look, you can't just leave. So they might have sent Cypher Pool 0 after the defecting members of Cypher Pool 9, and Cypher Pool 0 in their full force might have been stronger than Cypher Pool 9 could have handled. This was before the time skip also, so maybe they didn't have as much of a handle on hockey as they did, right? So they all know hockey right now, but back then maybe not. So maybe it's just like, hey, listen, you can't defect from the world government. You're going to either all die here, you're going to come back with us. Now, Cypher Pool 9 do care about one another as like, that's like the only family they've ever known, okay? And we saw that during the Independent report. We saw them all hanging out and going shopping together. Like, they are like a family, okay? They do care about one another, right? So it might have been a situation where maybe Rob Lucci, maybe Kaku could have stood up to the Cypher Pool 0 back then, but like Fukuro and Khalifa and Blueno, they're on the ground about, they're bleeding out, and they're like, okay, they're gonna die unless you just come back and join us. That's one possibility. By the way, another deviation of that, what if the government sent one of the God's Knights? Because that is kind of dealing with their purview. The God's Knights usually don't get involved with anything in the lower realm. They usually stay in Marijois. But all of Cypher Pool 9 is defecting. Not just one member, but all of Cypher Pool 9, including your top assassin, Rob Lucci, are all deciding to basically do a coup. That might have been a situation, and they directly threatened the world government, too. It's like, one day we shall return. Like, okay, so all of Cypher Pool 9, our top assassin agencies that are operating in the lower realm, are defecting. All members. And the top assassin of that agency directly threatened the world government that one day we're going to come back and kick your ass. So maybe one of the Gorosei got involved with that decision. Maybe somebody was just like, maybe Top Man was like, yes, send one of the God's Knights after them. We need to bring Rob Lucci and the others back into the fold, or we need to kill them because we don't want this to come back and bite us later. We saw what happened with Who's Who. He went and joined a Yonko. We can't have an entire Cypher Pool agency defect and then a couple years from now decide to, like, they could launch an attack on Marijois. They know all of our inner workings. No. So they send one of the God's Knights, not the whole team. They send one. Like, they send Shanks' hot sister after Cypher Pool 9, and she just kicks the shit out of mostly all of them. Maybe Rob Lucci and Kaku were able to, like, kind of stay up, like they don't get one-shotted immediately. Khalifa, Blueno, Kumadori, Fukuro, they all just get, like, Shanks' hot sister comes flying in and just whoosh, and then they're all just dropped instantly, okay? And then Kaku and Lucci are able to block it, and maybe Jabra. I keep forgetting Jabra. I haven't mentioned Jabra in this entire video. I knew, I was like, there's one of the members of Cypher Pool 9. I know I'm not naming them all. There's somebody I'm missing. Jabra, right, yes. And he's the third strongest, too. It's just like, yeah, Rob Lucci, Kaku, Kumadori, Khalifa, you know the rest, right? There's somebody out there right now that loves Jabra. It's like their favorite character. I'm like, oh, come on, Tekking. He's a wolf, for God's sakes. And they're like, all right, Jabra too. All right, Jabra also does not get one shot. Kaku, Lucci, and Jabra are able to, like, kind of not die immediately. They're only like 1 HP. Rob Lucci's at like 5 HP, right? Okay. And then Shanks' hot sister is just like, hey, you know, I was ordered to kill all of you or bring you back to the fold. We actually have a promotion for you. If you want to come back and play by the rules, Cypher Pool 0 does have openings. So you can come back to that, or I could kill you all right now. And maybe they were just looking at each other like, okay, I guess we'll do that. All right, and so maybe that's, we might find out about the God's Knights through Kaku. Kaku might mention them or something like, oh, you guys don't want to mess with the God's Knights. They sent one of them after us years ago, and they were able to annihilate pretty much the entire Cypher Pool 9 single-handedly, right? And so yeah, that could be a benchmark, like a power scaling moment for them, right? So that's one possibility. They could have been dragged back by force, and so they really don't have a choice under threat of execution or death. And so they just went right back into their roles, and Rob Lucci might have been like, all right, well, I'm an assassin my whole life. I tried to defect, but they made it very clear that it doesn't matter. So Rob Lucci might be aware at this point. He's not an idiot. He knows the government doesn't care about him. It's kind of like Rob Lucci trying to get out of, like, a toxic relationship now that I'm thinking about it. It's like, Rob Lucci, the government doesn't care about you. You're expendable to them. It's just like, I know, but I just keep going back. Just like, all right. No, I think Rob Lucci's aware. Government doesn't care about him, but it really is a matter of, like, they don't care about us, but if I try to leave again, they'll just kill all of us, and I don't want to die. I don't want my friends to die, so, Rob Lucci has at least a little sliver of humanity in him. I like to think he has a small amount of at least a little compassion for the other members. Maybe he doesn't, but maybe I'm giving him too much credit on that one, but maybe he does, in fact. At least he cares about Hattori. He cares about his pigeon friend. They might have threatened the pigeon. They might have been like, hey, Rob Lucci, come back with us or we're going to kill that pigeon, and Rob Lucci's like, okay, fine. You can kill all the other ones. You can kill all of them, especially Jabra. I don't care. But you don't touch the pigeon. All right, fine. And I want a fancy top hat and tie for Hattori from Cyberpole Zero. Like, okay, fine, we'll give you that. I'm like, all right, let's go. All right, so that's one option. How about the other one, though? And the other option, I mean, I like that option because it introduces the God Knights and, like, the world government actively making a decision, like, you're coming back. But here's another possibility on why Rob Lucci decided to come back into the fold, join Cyberpole Zero, and still be loyal to them, and it's of his own free will. It might have been a thing where Rob Lucci, they left, and the rest of Cyberpole 9 were kind of like, let's try to live normal lives. Let's try to live like civilians. Like, I always say this as a joke and a meme, and I made the videos about it. They might have actually tried to start a bakery. Like, maybe not an actual bakery, maybe some kind of cake smithery or something. I don't know. But they tried to make something of themselves in, like, normal civilian life. They did want to say goodbye to the whole assassin gig and the Cyberpole and the government. They wanted to just live their own lives. Kind of like how Baroque works, like in Miss Golden Week's Meet Baroque. They all just, what happens to them all, like Mr. 5 and Miss Valentine and Miss Merry Christmas and Mr. 4 and everybody. They go off to an island and they open up a new spider cafe, and that's apparently what they're still doing right now. Mr. 1, Daz Bones, is still working with Crocodile, obviously, but and Mr. 2 is heading up New Kamaland and Impel Down. But all the other ones, like, they're and Mr. 3 is working with Buggy. But all the other ones are, like, opening a new spider cafe. They essentially started a bakery together. So maybe Cyberpole 9 tried to do that, and maybe the government left them alone for the most part, but maybe Lucci literally just wasn't happy with that kind of life. He just, like, I was raised as an assassin my entire life. Like, killing people is literally all I've known. I can't do anything else. I literally can't. And so maybe he decided, he opted, maybe the other Cyberpole agents had similar views, because they were all raised in the exact same environment on that island where they were taught, the Rokushiki techniques. They were all children. They were the government essentially just kidnaps orphans, whether or not they're actual orphans, or maybe they kill their parents, or they just kidnap children, whichever. The government is pretty messed up, so you'll see that. But it's like they take a bunch of these orphans and bring them back to this island and train them in martial arts, and the ones that are the best at it, they get put in Cyberpole. Like, oh, you're not that great, so we'll put you in Cyberpole 2. Oh, this guy, Rob Lucci, this guy's good. We'll put him in Cyberpole 9. You're in the big leagues, kid. That kind of shit, right? So what if they tried living on their own and they decided, you know what? You live as an assassin, you die as an assassin, that's how it goes. And so they went back to the government and said, hey, we said we would be back someday. We want our jobs back. Like something like that, right? And I wouldn't consider that one-dimensional. A lot of times in fiction, when an author tries to do that, like, okay, we have a character that was a former villain and is trying to better themselves and may go over to the good side of things, a lot of times that happens, and it's just like, hey, I used to be a villain, but I've realized that, the people that I was working for didn't give a shit about me, so I'm going to go and work for you guys now because you guys actually care about one another, and then they become a good guy. But if it's done well, I really like it when the author does that, kind of setting it up, and then they backslide. Not the author like, oh, I've decided something else, but like that's the intent the whole time. Like, it's like, okay, I used to be a villain. Maybe I can go over to the other side, and then they think about it for a while, and maybe they do work with the good guys for a while, but then they're like, this isn't me. This isn't how I am. This isn't what I'm doing. I'm going to go back to the other side. I wouldn't say that's one-dimensional. I wouldn't say that's bad writing because that's how people are. I think we've all known people in our lives that maybe are in a part of their lives where it's just like, hey, you're on like a spiral to nowheresville, man, or something. You know, it's like you're in a very detrimental point in your life. You need to change. You need to, you know, improve your life. And maybe they would try to. It's like, okay, I'm gonna do that. I'm done with all this bullshit in my life. I'm gonna do better. And they might try to do better, but then at a certain point, it might be either internal factors for themselves or external factors in the world around them. For one reason or another, they can't change, and they just like go right back to where they were. And sometimes they even accept it. It's just like, you know what? This is who I am. This is what I do, and that's how it goes, right? That might be a situation. Does that not happen in real life? Of course that happens in real life, okay? So in that situation, that might have been something with Rob Lucci. I'm picturing Lucci, okay, not a bakery, a pizzeria. They decide to start a pizzeria. They find an island. They go into the island, and nobody knows what they look like, I guess. Maybe they wear disguises or something. Rob Lucci's wearing a funny mustache, and they're like, okay, we're going to have to do the disguises for a little while, right? So they start a pizzeria, and then Rob Lucci's there, and he's twirling the dough, and he's like, all right, I'm going to try to make this work. You know, this is a nice, peaceful life. I could grow old. Maybe I can, you know, get married someday and have some either children running around or whatever, and I can just live the normal, peaceful civilian life. I can put all the stuff behind me of the government and the cipher pole and the straw hats all behind me, and I can just do this. And like Rob Lucci, he's having this fantasy as he's like twirling the pizza dough, and then he just comes out of it, and then the customer's dead on the floor because, you know, Lucci was like she-gunning the pizza. I'll take one pepperoni. Oh, God! Just like, I'll take a slice of pepperoni. Oh, Jesus! And Lucci just comes out of it, and it's just like a person on the floor with a freaking Shigon bullet hole in their eye. And he's like, yeah. And then Kaku walks in. He's like, hey, Lucci, I got some more frozen dough. And just, oh, come on! I'm sorry, Kaku. I'm trying here. I'm trying. It's not easy. It's like, Lucci. What are we gonna do with you? This is, I want this so bad. I want this so bad. I want the Cypherpole 9 open a pizzeria sitcom together. That would be so hilarious. It would be great. You could have a cheesy 80s fucking opening to it, and just like, he was a guy that was an assassin, but then he decided to make a pizzeria. He has all of his friends here in this little town. They're gonna live do Cypherpole 9 do Cypherpole 9. Oh, God, I gotta stop filming these as soon as I wake up. I'm really slap happy right now. Okay, so we have all those options on the table, ladies and gentlemen. We have Shanks' hot sister dragging them back by force, and, or you'll say for Paul bringing them back, and then we have Lucci going off and starting a pizzeria, and then deciding to go, like, nah, this isn't for me, and they just join Cypher Pool Zero that way. In either case, I don't think Lucci's never going to change. Okay, we're never, if Oda was going to do a thing where Lucci was, and I want to stress here, I don't think Lucci's going to be like a good guy. I never thought that. I want to get that off the table right now. I never thought that, like, Lucci's going to realize the error of his ways and decide to become a good person and join the Straw Hats. No. That was never on the table. But what I was thinking of is, like, maybe Lucci realizes the government doesn't care. He decides to, like, I'm going to go off and do my own thing. Screw this. I'm done with everything. I'm done with pirates. I'm done with the government. I'm done with the Marines. I'm done with all that bullshit. I'm done. That's not going to happen now, because if there was an option to happen and it didn't happen, so I don't think Oda's going to do that again, okay? Rob Lucci is Rob Lucci, and he is an assassin, and that's how he will live, and that's how he will die, all right? So, honestly, like, if this fight with Zoro goes, if it actually happens, and it doesn't get, broken up by anything, or, separated at one point, Rob Lucci might just get killed by Zoro. Honestly, that would be, it's the final arc, it's the final saga. We might have moments with Lucci where we maybe get a little bit more of his backstory, and Lucci could talk about how they rejoined, and he might give a warning for the God Knights or something, like Zoro has him dead to rights, like he cuts off one of Rob Lucci's arms, and Lucci's on the ground bleeding out, and Hattori's just like, oh, Kuropu. And Lucci just looks right up at Zoro. And you know Lucci's not the kind of guy that would beg for his life. That is not how Rob Lucci does shit. So he would be looking up at Zoro, and Zoro's just like, okay, you know what? We've had it with your bullshit. You know, Luffy didn't kill you 2 years ago. I'm going to rectify that right now. You have any last words? Rob Lucci would look right at him and just like, tell you what, because you got me done, I'll just tell you straight up, you know? If you think Cypher Pole Zero is the top of the echelon, you think we're the strongest out there, that is not true. There are people up there, they're called the God Knights. They're stronger than me. They're stronger than all Cypher Pole Zero put together. If you're really going to want to change the world, you're going to have to deal with them because the Gorosei are pissed off at you majorly right now, okay? Does Rob Lucci know St. J. Garcia Saturn is there? If he is aware that one of the Gorosei are there, you know, he might give them that information. The Straw Hats don't know. The Straw Hats talked to 4 of the Gorosei over the Den Den Mushi with York's conversation, but I don't think the Straw Hats know that St. J is right there, parked outside of Egghead. If Rob Lucci knows that, he might not, but if he does, he might give that information. It's like, you know what? Here you go. Take this information. I'm ready. Lived an assassin, born as an assassin, die as an assassin. You do it. And Zoro's just like, all right, thank you for the info. Cuts off Rob Lucci's head, calls it a day. You know, and then we have the cover story of Hattori traveling on his own. You know what? If that actually did happen and Kaku decided, no, I'm not with him. I'm not with him. You know, I'm going to leave and just do my own thing. You'll never hear from me again. And then Zoro's like, okay, fine, whatever. And then you have this sad moment where Hattori lands on Kaku's shoulder and he's just really sad and just, you know, you know, just like, okay, this is it. I'm out of here. And then Kaku leaves. Never hear from him again, okay? So, maybe that's how it's going to go. There's some options on the table. This wasn't really a video about Zoro versus Lucci. Liam over at Grand Line Review, he made that video like yesterday. So I'm like, okay, he tackled that angle with it. But I wanted to tackle more about who is Rob Lucci? Who is he as a person? You know what I mean? And how did he end up where he is right now, right? So anyway, thanks for watching the video, everybody. This will be Teching signing out. But first, we have to do some Yellow Jacket facts before we go. All right, so Yellow Jacket facts. I was debating whether or not I should do actual facts about Yellow Jackets, you know, or I should just make up a bunch of bullshit, you know, in the year 6666 BC, Satan creates the Yellow Jacket, you know, something like that. No. So I will do real facts, okay? So some people actually question, like, oh, you call them Yellow Jackets. That's so strange. We just call them wasps or bees. They're not bees. Don't call them bees. They are definitely not bees. But Yellow Jacket is not like their official species name, okay? They are part of the genus Vespula, and the specific species do have a yellow and black coat or, you know, like a design on their like exoskeleton, and so that's the reason why Yellow Jacket is kind of a parlance here, especially in the eastern United States where I live, where we have the Eastern Yellow Jacket. These sons of britches, I'll tell you what. All right, so these things are annoying as shit. These ones particularly like to make ground hives. So if you're ever out walking around, just having a nice little stroll, if you're just sitting on your porch. When I was a kid growing up at my parents' house, there was a nest at one point right below the porch, and I didn't know that. One day, it was actually the 4th of July, I was setting off firecrackers and pissed a bunch of them off, and they started to sting my ankles. There was another time, there was another ground hive at a friend's place. We were just kind of hanging out on the porch, just kind of like our legs dangling over the side of the porch. They came out and started to swarm around us. So ground hives are like a little landmine. You can run over them when you're weed whacking, when you're running the lawnmower. I mean, these things can all pour out, and they are very, very dedicated to protect their hives. So they will pour out on moss. I got swarmed by these when I was like 7, which leads to my hatred/fear of them. That wasn't a ground hive. That was just a regular hive. However, I actually prefer when they're ground hives because there's really easy way to deal with them. When I was growing up, so I was told that like, oh, you could just pour like an entire, like, or you just like take some bug spray, wait till night when they're all the foragers are in the hive, in the ground. You can find their little hole in the ground. You could just spray a whole thing in there, bug spray, and that'll kill them. But if you really want to be damn sure they're dead, because sometimes that doesn't always work. Depends on how big the hive is, and they can always make another hole to get out. So what you typically need to use is gasoline. Yeah, that's fun. And just like, oh, there's a ground hive over there. All right, wait until dark, and then you take some gasoline, take a gas tank, and just glug, 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 glug. And they're dead as shit. All right, so you could do that. It's a handy little tip to get rid of them. If you for an added flare, you could always light a match, but be careful with that. If it's like really close to the house, you don't want to start a house fire or anything. But if the ground hive's out in the middle of the, like the yard or something, you pour gas down there. All right, I think they're all dead, but just to be sure. Just to be sure. All right, you may have a cremation of them. Okay. So, yeah, eastern yellow jackets, very annoying. They sting multiple times. They're not bees. They're wasps. I think the rule is all hornets are wasps, but not all wasps are hornets. Wasp is like the genus or like the family or suborder or something, and then hornets is more down there. So that's how that goes. So, yeah. There's your yellow jacket fact. I have a lot of them. They're something I really fear, so therefore I know a lot about them. All right, thanks for watching, everybody. This will be Teching signing out. Bye.